Shields and the Cricket Cup by P.G. Wodehouse. The House Cricket Cup at Riken has found itself on some strange mantelpieces in its time. New talent has a way of cropping up in the house matches, tail-end men, hit-up 50s and bowlers, who have never taken a wicket before except at the nets go on fifth change, and dismiss first 11 experts, with deliveries that bounce twice and shoot so that nobody is greatly surprised in the ordinary run of things if the cup does not go to the favorites, or even to the second or third favorites. But one likes to draw the line, and Riken drew it at Shields, and yet as we shall proceed to show, Shields once won the cup, and that too in a year when Donaldson's had 4 first 11 men, and Dexter's 3. Shields occupied a unique position at the school. It was an absolutely inconspicuous house. There were other houses that were slack or wild or both, but the worst of these did something Shields never did anything. It never seemed to want to do anything. This may have been due in some degree to Mr. Shields, as the housemaster is, so the house is he, was the most inconspicuous master on the staff. He taught a minute form in the junior school, where earnest infants wrestled with somebody's handy book of easy Latin sentences, and depraved infants threw cunningly compounded ink balls at one another. And the ceiling after school, he would range the countryside with a pickle bottle in search of pollywoggles and other big game which he subsequently transferred to slides and examined through a microscope till an advanced hour of the night. The curious part of the matter was that his house was never riotous. Perhaps he was looked on as a non-combatant one, whom it would be unfair and unsporting to rag. At any rate, a weird calm reigned over the place, and this spirit seemed to permeate the public lives of the Shieldsites. They said nothing much, and they did nothing much, and they were very inoffensive. As a rule, one hardly knew they were there. Into this abode of Lotosiaters came Cleffin, a day boy owing to the departure of his parents for India. Cleffin wanted to go to Donaldson's. In fact, he said so, his expressions, indeed, when he found that the whole thing had been settled, and that he was to spend his last term at school at a house, which had never turned out so much as a member of the Gym Six bordered on the unfilial. It appeared that his father had met Mr. Shields at dinner in the town, of fact, to which he seemed to attach a mystic importance. Cleffin's criticism of this attitude of mind was of such a nature as to lead his father to address him as Archibald instead of Archie. However, the thing was done, and Cleffin showed his good sense by realizing this and turning his energetic mind to the discovery of the best way of making life at Shields' endurable fortune, favored him by sending to the house another day boy one Mansfield. Cleffin had not known him intimately before, though they were both members of the second 11, but at Shields they instantly formed an alliance, and in due seasoner a little later the house matches began. Henfrey of Days, the Riken cricket captain, met Cleffin at the nets when the drawing for opponents had been done. "Just the man I wanted to see," said Henfrey. "I suppose you're a captain of Shields." Lot Cleffin, "Well, you're a going to scratch as usual, I suppose." For the last 5 seasons that lamentable house had failed to put a team into the field. "You'd better," said Henfrey. "We haven't overmuch time as it is. That match with Paggett's team has thrown us out a lot. We ought to have started the house matches a week ago." "Scratch," said Cleffin. "Don't you wish we would, my good chap? We're going to get the cup." "You needn't be a funny ass," said Henfrey in his complaining voice. "We really are awfully pushed. As it is, we shall have to settle the opening rounds on the first innings. That's to say, we can only give 'em a day each. If they don't finish, the winner of the first innings wins. You might as well scratch. I can't help your troubles by rot mismanagement. You have got the house matches crowded up into the last 10 days of term, and you come and expect me to sell a fine side like Shields to get you out of the consequences of your reckless act. My word, Henfrey, you've sunk pretty low." Nice young fellow Henfrey was at one time, but seems to have got among bad companions, quite changed now. Avoid him as much as I can. Leave me, Henfrey. I would be alone. "But you can't raise a team." "Raise a team? Do you happen to know that half the house is biting itself with agony because we can't find room for all?" Shields gives cricket soirees in his study. After prep 1, every time you hit the ball 2 into the bowl of goldfish, and out if you smash the microscope. "Well," said Henfrey viciously, "if you want to go through the farce of playing 1 round and making idiots of yourselves, y'all have to wait a bit. You've got a bye in the first round." Cleffin told the news to Mansfield after tea. "I've been and let the house in for a rollicking time," he said, abstracting the copy of Latin verses, which his friend was doing and sitting on them, to ensure undivided attention to his words. Wanting to score off old Henfrey, "I have few pleasures." I told him that Shields was not going to scratch, so we are booked to play in the second round of the Housers. We drew a bye for the first. It would be an awful rag, If we could do something, we must raise a team of some sort. Henfrey would score, so, if we didn't, who's there do you think that can play? Mansfield considered the question thoughtfully. They all play, I suppose, he said slowly. If you can call it playing, what I mean to say is cricket's compulsory here, so I suppose they've all had an innings or two at one time or another in the 80th game or so. But if you want record breakers, I shouldn't trust to Shields too much. Not a bit, so long as we put a full team into the field, that's all I care about. I've often wondered what it's like to go in first and bowl unchanged the whole time. Y'all do that all right, said Mansfield. I should think Shields' bowling ran to slow grubs to judge from the look of em. You'd better go and see Wilkins about raising the team as head of the house. He probably considers himself captain of cricket. Wilkins, however, took a far more modest view of his position. The notion of leading a happy band of cricketers from Shields into the field had, it seemed, small attractions for him, but he went so far as to get a house list and help choose a really representative team. And as details about historic teams are always welcome, we may say that the averages ranged from 3 to 8. This last was Wilkins' own, and was, as he would have been the first to admit, substantially helped by a contribution of 19 in a single innings in the fifth game. So the team was selected, and Cleffing turned out after school next day to give them a little fielding practice. To his surprise, the fielding was not so outrageous as might have been expected. All the simpler catches were held, and one or two of the harder as well. Given this form on the day of their appearance in public, and Henfrey might be disappointed when he came to watch and smile sarcastically. A batting fiasco is not one half so ridiculous as maniac fielding. In the meantime, the first round of the house matches had been played off, and it would be as well to describe at this point the positions of the rival houses and their prospects. In the first place, there were only 4 teams really in the running for the Cup days, headed by the redoubtable Henfrey Spences, who had Jackson that season ahead and shoulders above the other batsmen in the first 11, had just wound up the school season with an average of 51. Donaldson's and Dexter's. All the other house teams were mainly tail. Now in the first round, the powerful quartet had been diminished by the fact that Donaldson's had drawn Dexter's and had lost to them by a couple of wickets. For the second round, Shields drew Appleby's, a poor team space on the Riken field being a consideration, with 3 house matches to be played off at the same time. Cleffing's men fought their first battle on rugged ground in an obscure corner. As the captain of cricket ordered these matters, Henfrey had naturally selected the best bit of turf for Days v. Dexter's. That section of the ground, which was sacred to the school second 11 matches, was allotted to Spence's v. the schoolhouse. The idle public divided its attention between the 2 big games and paid no attention to the death struggle in progress at the far end of the field, whereby it missed a deal of quiet fun. I say death struggle advisedly. Cleffing had won his second 11 cap. As a fast bowler, he had failed to get into the first 11, because he was considered too erratic. Put these 2 facts together, and you will suspect that dark deeds were wrought on the men of Appleby in that lonely corner of the Riken meadow. The pitch was not a good one. As a sample of the groundman's art, it was sketchy and amateurish. It lacked finish. Cleffing won the toss, took a hasty glance at the corrugated turf, and decided to bat first. The wicket was hardly likely to improve with use. He and Mansfield opened the batting. He stood 3 feet out of his ground and smote the first 4 balls. He took full pitch. The last 2, owing to a passion for variety on the part of the bowler, were long hops. At the end of the over, Shields' score was 24. Mansfield pursued the same tactics. When the first wicket fell, 70 was on the board. A spirit of martial enthusiasm pervaded the ranks of the house team. Mild youths with spectacles leaped out of their ground like tigers and snicked 4s through the slips. When the innings concluded, blood had been spilt from an injured fingerbutt. The total was 102. Then Cleffing walked across to the school shop for a vanilla ice. He said he could get more devil, as it were, into his bowling after a vanilla ice. He had a couple. When he bowled his first ball, it was easy to see that there was truth in the report of the causes of his inclusion in the second 11. An exclusion from the first, the batsman observed somewhat weakly. Here I say, and backed towards square leg. The ball soared over the wicket-keeper's head and went to the boundary. The bowler grinned pleasantly and said he was just getting his arm in. The second ball landed full pitch on the batsman's right thigh. The third was another full pitch, this time on the top of the middle stump, which it smashed with profound satisfaction. The batsman hobbled to the trees and sat down. Let somebody else have a shot, he said kindly. Applebee's made 28 that innings. Their defeat by an innings and 53 runs, they attributed subsequently to the fact that only 7 of the team could be induced to go to the wickets in the second venture. So you've managed to win a match, grunted Henfrey. I should like to have been there. You might just as well have been, said Cleffin, from what they tell me. At which Henfrey became abusive, for he had achieved an egg that afternoon and missed a catch, which things soured him, though Days had polished off Dexter's handsomely. Well, he said at length, Uray, in the semi-final now of all weird places, you'd better play Spence's. Next, when can you play? Henfrey, said Cleffin, I have a bright, open, boyish countenance, but I was not born yesterday. You want to get a dangerous rival out of the way without trouble, so you set Shields to smash up Spence's. No, Henfrey, I do not intend to be your catspaw. We will draw lots who is to play which. Here comes Jackson, well, toss odd man out. And when the coins fell, there were 2 tails and 1 head, and the head belonged to the coin of Cleffin. So you see, he said to Henfrey, Shields is in the final. No wonder you wanted us to scratch. I should like this story to end with a vivid description of a tight finish, considering that Days beat Spence's, and consequently met Shields in the final. That would certainly be the most artistic ending. Henfrey batting, Cleffin bowling on to tie 2, to win 1 wicket, to fall up goes the ball. Will the lad catch it? He fumbles it. It falls, all is over, but look with the supreme effort, and so on. The real conclusion was a little sensational in its way, but not nearly so exciting as that. The match between Days and Shields opened in a conventional enough manner. Days batted first and made 250. Henfrey carried his bat for 76, and there were some 30s for Shields. Cleffin and Mansfield made their usual first wicket stand, and the rest brought the total up to 98. At this point, Henfrey introduced a variation on custom. The match was a 3 days match, in fact, owing to the speed with which the other games had been played. It could, if necessary, last 4 days. The following was therefore a matter for the discretion of the side, which led Henfrey and his team saw no reason why they should not have another pleasant spell of batting before dismissing their opponents for the second time and acquiring the cup. So in they went again and made another 250 odd, Shields being left with 412 to make to win. On the morning after Days' second innings, a fag from Days brought Cleffin a message from Henfrey. Henfrey was apparently in bed. He would be glad if Cleffin would go and see him in the dinner hour. The interview lasted 15 minutes. Then Cleffin burst out of the house and dashed across to Shields in search of Mansfield. I say, have you heard? He shouted. What's up? Why, every man in Days' team bar 2 kids is in bed. Roman 99. Do you mean to say you haven't heard they thought they'd got that house cup safe, so all the team, except the 2 kids fags, had a feed in honor of it in Henfrey's study? Some ass went and bought a bad rabbit pie, and now they're laid up not badly, but they won't be out for a day or 2. But what about the match? Oh, that'll go on. I made a point of that. They can play subs. Mansfield looked thoughtful. But I say, he said, it isn't very sporting, is it? Oughtn't we to wait or something? Sporting, my dear chap, a case like this mustn't be judged by ordinary standards. We can't spoil the giant rag of the century, because it isn't quite sporting. Think what it means, Shields getting the cup. It'll keep the school laughing for terms. What do you want to spoil people's pleasure for? Oh, all right, said Mansfield. Besides, think of the moral effect it'll have on the house. It may turn it into the blood house of Riken. Shields himself may get quite sportive. We mustn't miss the chance. The news having got about the school, Cleffin and Mansfield opened their second innings to the somewhat embarrassed trundling of Masters Royce and Tibbet of the junior school before a substantial and appreciative audience. Both played carefully at first, but soon getting the measure of the bowling, which was not deep, began to hit out, and runs came quickly at 50. Tibbet, understudying Henfrey, as captain of the side, summoned to his young friend Todby from short leg, and instructed him to have a go. At the top end. It was here that Cleffin courteously interfered. Substitutes, he pointed out, were allowed by the laws of cricket only to field, not to bowl. He must therefore request friend Todby to return to his former sphere of utility, where he added politely, he was a perfect demon. But blow it, said Master Tibbet, who alas was addicted to the use of strong language. Royce, and I can't bowl the whole blessed time. Y'all have to, I am afraid, said Cleffin, with the kindly air of a doctor, soothing a refractory patient. Of course, you can take a spell at Grubbs whenever you like. Oh, darn, said Master Tibbet. Shortly afterwards, Clefin made his century. The match ended late on the following afternoon, in a victory for Shields by 9 wickets, and the scene at the school shop, when Royce and Tibbet arrived to drown their sorrows and moisten their dry throats with ginger beer, is said by eyewitnesses to have been something quite out of the common run. The score sheet of the match is also a little unusual. Clefin's 300, and one not out is described in the Rykinian as a masterly exhibition of sound, yet aggressive batting. How Henfrey described it we have never heard.